If you're new to quizzing, you probably have a lot of questions about the quiz material, like, which book or books will I be studying this year, next year, 5 years from now? What happens if a book is really short or really long? Does quizzing itself work differently depending on the year's material? Thankfully, the system used for choosing quiz material is simple and well established, meaning you can know what to expect for years to come. In the C&MA Bible quizzing system, only New Testament books are used. You'll never quiz over books like Leviticus or Zephaniah. The quizzing system divides the New Testament into two broad categories: narratives and epistles. Narrative books describe and document historical events, like what Jesus did while here on earth. These are all longer books, so there's never more than one in a single quiz season. In most cases, only part of a narrative book will be studied. On the other hand, epistles are letters written to members of the early church. These books are much shorter than narratives, so there will be anywhere from 2 to 4 of them depending on the year. The people who set up the material rotation tried to balance the verse count between years, but there is still a lot of variation. Narrative years have more verses than epistle years. The quiz material cycles through an 8-year rotation, alternating between narratives and epistles. The 4 narratives studied are Matthew, Acts, Luke, and John, with all of them but John limited to only part of the book. The 4 epistle years cover Romans and James, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, and Hebrews and 1st and 2nd Peter, going through the full books every time. The only official difference between narrative and epistle years is the situation question type. Because situation questions rely on a quotation from someone speaking, there would be a major shortage of them in epistle years. Therefore, these questions are only used in narrative years. While this is the only official change between years, it's important to note that the content of the quiz material will differ widely, with each book presenting different challenges. As mentioned before, narrative years have longer material. In addition, narratives tend to have more repetition, with similar wording being used in multiple places. This can make finding the correct passage to answer a question more difficult, and is a major reason why many quizzers find narrative years to be harder. On the other hand, while epistles are shorter and less repetitive, they sometimes have longer sentences, more complicated vocabulary, and more complex ideas, all of which give epistles their own special requirements for studying. Other than these nuances, however, quizzing itself remains mostly the same from one year to the next. So, in review, the quiz material goes through an 8-year cycle, alternating between New Testament narratives and epistles. The amount of material varies from year to year, but is relatively balanced. While the material itself impacts quizzing in some ways, the basics remain unchanged between seasons.